A flash of light lit up the void, then two more followed. A man appeared, suspended in an endless space. The brightest light glowed behind his body. This boundless realm, teeming with monsters and constellations, was known as the Abyss. A creature resembling a hydra trailed the man with its mouth agape. He continued to fall until he struck the monster, known as the fierce seven-headed dragon, with a surge of powerful magic. The dragon roared in anger and opened its jaws wide. In response, the man folded his body into a diving stance and suddenly unleashed a flurry of high-speed punches. An epic battle erupted in the skies. Behind him, a bear-like planet-eater named Vulcan approached. The man spread his arms, welcoming the fight against not one but two powerful monsters that ruled their territories in the abyss. Just then, another creature appeared, thin-limbed and sinister. Org and Vulcan became entangled in glowing red threads. It was a rare sight to witness both beasts at once. Into this chaotic scene entered yet another monster, a massive arachnid, ruler of the spatial cave. It immobilized the boy, who clenched his teeth in fear. The creature hissed menacingly. The man's eyes gleamed with resolve. He lowered his arms and realized it felt like more than 300 years had passed. Gazing into the endless void, he thought it might have been easier to deal with these monsters one at a time. Their corpses now lay scattered before him. But he felt the weight of wasted time. He resolved to find a way back to Earth, as soon as possible. Then, a notification appeared: he had achieved a feat worthy of the title, Invincible Training Master. The world resonated with him, his presence had become more tangible. He looked up, and the system declared that he was now stronger than even a constellation. One day, a portal to the abyss opened on Earth. Humanity realized mythology wasn't just imagination. Beings with wings, known as constellations, were the closest things to deities. They blessed humans and expanded their followers, their eyes glowing brighter as their authority grew. These celestial beings battled for control of Earth, an invaluable treasure trove with nearly 10 billion potential followers. While some constellations offered blessings, others sought domination through brute force. Then a man, or rather, a constellation, stood against them. He steadied himself and took a deep breath. His name was Kai. With a serious expression, he picked up a frying pan and tossed in a slab of meat. The invincible training master resumed cooking. Asked about the pan, he smiled and said it was forged from adamantine. Beside him stood a green-skinned goblin, skeptical that any cookware could prepare the meat of a planet-eating bear, a creature feared even by constellations. He pointed at the oil sizzling on the meat and asked its origin. This goblin, the ruler of the goblin kingdom of Ephesus, was also a great wizard named Max, and a follower of Kai. Kai touched the meat thoughtfully, recalling a constellation shaped like a cow, which he'd spared in exchange for milk. With a nostalgic look, he admitted how much he had longed for real food back then. Max was stunned. His master had fought and spared a constellation. For milk, Kai explained that his greatest hobby in the abyss, for tens of thousands of years, had been cooking. He sliced butter using his treasured orichalcum kitchen tools, which kept ingredients fresh upon contact. This was his first real meat in 300 years, and he felt he had earned it. Max began to sweat, realizing his master had defeated a constellation not for power or territory, but for ingredients. Kai took a bite. It was cooked to perfection. Max, overwhelmed, accepted the dish with awe and gratitude. As he took a bite, light burst from Max's eyes and mouth. The system announced, "You have consumed a steak from a constellation." Fire ignited in the wizard's hand. The adamantine pan had preserved the umami of the meat through magic. Waves of energy radiated from Max's body. The system added, "Thanks to the mystical constellation oil, the meat has reached a new level." A magic circle activated beneath Max and transformed into a monarch's circle. The wizard nearly passed out from joy and declared the dish the best he'd ever tasted. Kai, puzzled, watched and quietly concluded, "I'll never understand goblins." He sat on a rock and looked up at the glittering, starry sky. "I miss Earth," he murmured. Somewhere on Earth, someone struggled with a bench press. Tens of thousands of years ago, by Abyss standards, Kai had once been lying beneath a barbell when someone asked why he was lifting it. He simply replied, "I want to get stronger." The middle-aged man grimaced, resting the textbook against his hip. He explained that this was supposed to be a Korean lesson. Someone in the class, however, muttered that the teacher should just leave the boy alone, just like all the others had. This was back when Kai was still an ordinary person, long before he became the constellation known as the Invincible Training Master. Even then, Kai was obsessed with strength. He spent every moment lifting weights in his room. A skull hung on the wall, an eerie reminder that, as an orphan with no one to rely on, he had to become strong enough to protect himself. Day after day, he trained, lifting the barbell until his body adapted and his power grew. Taking a brief rest, Kai laid the equipment across his chest, arms bent and muscles sore. At the time, he was only a C+ rank hunter. Hunters were part of a new and revered profession. They fought monsters and cleared dungeons emerging from the abyss, protecting civilians from otherworldly threats. It was dangerous work, but the rewards were great. Monster cores, magical items, and dungeon artifacts could fetch high prices and bring glory. Kai had nothing to lose. So, he became a hunter. Seated nearby, a man named Bill looked over and called out to him. "Hey, maybe take it easy for a bit," he suggested. Kai was drenched in sweat, still catching his breath. Bill seemed genuinely concerned. "I think it's too soon for a dungeon filled with B-rank monsters," he warned. "We're barely surviving C-rank ones as it is. Even veteran hunters take losses there." Leaning on the barbell, Kai remained silent. Bill continued. "Sure, magic, martial arts, and all those dungeon artifacts are great. But no matter how hard we try, people are just too weak." Kai's expression darkened. Bill rubbed his face, visibly frustrated. "Do you really not care what happens to you? Don't you have someone? A girlfriend, maybe?" Kai pulled a small item from his inventory, replying quietly, "We broke up." Bill blinked, surprised. "I'm sorry to hear that. Why?" "I told her I couldn't go on dates because of my training," Kai replied, calmly stretching his arms. "Eventually, she told me to go date a monster instead." He gave a faint smile. It wasn't a bad breakup. Just peaceful. Bill buried his face in his hands. "You're hopeless." Suddenly, an explosion rocked the area. A monster was charging straight toward them. "Kai," someone shouted. "Look out." The beast opened its mouth and roared. Kai didn't flinch. He calmly took a fighting stance, then launched forward, delivering a devastating punch to the creature's chest. His body tensed, muscles coiled. The battle had begun. As he engaged the monster, the other hunters looked on, murmuring amongst themselves. "Martial artists really have it rough," one said. "They're durable, sure, great tanks, but their damage can't match a mage's." Kai slammed a fist into the monster's chin. "Why'd he choose to become a fist fighter anyway?" someone asked. Apparently, another replied, "He found a martial arts scroll while farming. Since everyone was obsessed with magic, no one wanted it. So Kai started studying it." Kai stood over the fallen monster, his eyes steady. He didn't care what others thought. He had no regrets about pursuing martial arts. While others slept, he trained. Fist fighting wasn't flashy or convenient like magic, but it was honest. It rewarded effort with strength, something that matched his resolve perfectly. He lifted his leg high, then lunged forward with precision and speed. No regrets. Just relentless drive. At 3 a.m., Kai sat in a corner of his room, staring at the clock, sweat trickling down his face. Still not enough, he thought. He reflected on how far he'd come. Through pure effort and relentless discipline, he had reached C+ rank. But he knew others had surpassed even that. And he wasn't finished yet. Kai leaned against the wall, sweat trickling down his temple, and came to a clear conclusion: he needed to train more. Longer. Harder. Relentlessly. He closed his eyes, exhaustion washing over him. But even in sleep, his body didn't rest. In his dreamscape, Kai continued to train. His limbs moved instinctively, arms spread wide, a powerful knee strike slicing the air. A mysterious voice broke the silence. "Are you awake even in your sleep?" Kai responded without hesitation. "No, it's not like that. But I heard spiritual training counts too, right?" A beam of light fell across his face. Squinting, he turned toward it. "Who are you?" From the brightness emerged a humanoid figure with long hair and bandaged eyes. She addressed him respectfully, "Mr. Kai." Shielding his eyes from the blinding light, Kai's pupils narrowed. The figure's next words made his heart skip a beat. "I am the virtuous goddess of the scales, Themis, a constellation of the abyss." She smiled gently. "I know you're surprised. But let's not waste time, we don't have much." Kai blinked, uncertain what to say. Themis turned away slightly, as if nervous. Normally, people ask a lot of questions when meeting a constellation. "But you, I accept," Kai interrupted. She paused, stunned. "You. What?" "I agree," he repeated, his tone calm but determined. Themis stepped closer, confused. "You don't want to ask anything first?" Kai simply asked, "Will I become stronger?" Themis raised her hand slowly to her lips and nodded. "Yes." That was enough. Kai smiled sincerely. "Then I accept." The light around them intensified. "Why me?" he asked. "There are many hunters with higher ranks and more fame." Themis, collecting the light in her palm, replied, "I already told you. I am the goddess of the scales. I can see the future." Her hand dimmed, and with a gesture, she released a vision into the air, a horrifying sight. She showed him Earth's future: monsters ravaging cities, skies torn apart, machines and humans devoured alike. Soon, she warned, evil constellations like Org will descend in full force. When that time comes, today's dungeons and monsters will feel like child's play. A crimson planet hovered beneath Kai's feet. "You," Themis declared, "are the key to preventing this." Kai stared in disbelief. The goddess flew beside him. "I will make you stronger. But the training will be long, brutal, inhuman." Her nervous smile betrayed her fear. She wiped sweat from her brow, muttering, "I didn't think anyone would accept such a deal so easily." Raising her arms, she explained, "If you endure, you'll become my avatar." She brought her hands together solemnly. "But understand, this contract is unfair. Illogical. And irreversible." A blinding flash marked the offer's completion. Kai shielded his eyes. Becoming an avatar meant more than just power, it meant his soul would be bound to a constellation. A life of constant limitation. A heavy burden. Themis extended a glowing orb toward him. "Look inside," she said softly. Kai opened his eyes and stared. The orb pulsed with raw power and magic. "In return, you'll receive power, magic. An immediate rise in rank. All I ask is for you to become my avatar." She added, "Constellations must compete for candidates. You may attract others. But I chose you first." Kai and Themis locked eyes. They both understood the gravity of this. He smiled. "What kind of training are we talking about?" Themis looked almost guilty. "I've prepared a special training facility in the abyss. Time moves differently there. Dozens. Maybe hundreds of years may pass for you." Kai's eyes widened. "Wait, alone? For that long?" She nodded. "Even if you quit halfway?" You can't return. Kai began to sweat. This sounds like the hyperbolic time chamber from Dragon Ball. Themis tilted her head. I don't know what that is. Kai clenched his fists. No, this is right. Great hunters became stronger through contracts like these. But he was wrong. Others had gained strength before they became avatars. Themis spread her arms. This is too much to ask. I understand if you want to take a week to think, I've decided, Kai interrupted. She blinked. Are you sure? I'm not that attached to this world. Just let me leave a letter behind. I don't need time to think. I want strength. And if the world gets saved too. That's a bonus. Themis lowered her arms, stunned. Kai's voice broke the silence. The letter. Themis nodded, wiping away tears. I was afraid. I heard people from Earth were greedy. But I'm glad, my prophecy was right this time. Suddenly, the space above them cracked. A portal opened. Shattered pieces floated through the air. Just think of your message, Themis instructed. I'll send it where you want. Kai faced the portal. Let's begin. He reached toward it. His fingers disappeared into the swirling magic, then his arm, his torso, and finally, he vanished entirely. Only a crack remained in the sky. Back in his room, silence. The barbell lay still. Beside it, a letter appeared. The name and address were scrawled on the corner. A flash of lightning ripped through the sky. A hurricane formed in the void, and from it, Kai emerged. He opened one eye, gauging the atmosphere. The magical density here was immense. Far beyond Earth's limits. He looked up at floating islands in the endless darkness. This looks like a dungeon, he muttered. Maybe the scientists were right. Maybe dungeons are fragments of the abyss. He stared at his fists, then cracked his neck. Let's begin. Kai started moving, fists flying, breath sharp and controlled. Far away, Themis was surrounded by her winged attendants. I think I made the right choice, she whispered. The others hesitated. I know my vision isn't perfect, she added. I can only see fragments. Predictions. Guesses. But this time. I saw him. Training. Becoming something more. She also knew he would one day suppress the invasion of the evil constellations. The goddess raised 2 fingers, deciding that creating such a strong man who would swear loyalty to her and become her avatar was the perfect plan, no matter how long it might take. With these thoughts, she departed, her confidence leaving her subordinates even more anxious. They had a bad feeling, but all they could do now was wait for the young man to arrive for training. Far behind the protagonist, another hurricane appeared. The goddess believed everything was prepared. The storm drew closer, and the constellation was certain the protagonist had things to keep him entertained, and most importantly, a safe place. Kai noticed the approaching tornado, something he hadn't expected to see. He turned toward the threatening force of nature. The goddess believed this was the least she could do for him. Looking up, Kai assumed it was a test. He raised his fists and accepted it, because strength could only be earned through trials. If this test was from the goddess, then it held purpose. The whirlwind slammed into the ground. Kai screamed, was this really a divine test? He closed his eyes, feeling like his body was being torn apart. Gritting his teeth, he forced his eyes open and resolved to endure it. The violent winds lifted him into the air, spinning him within the tornado. Lost in the storm, Kai cried out a quote, something about how true strength comes only through overcoming pain and hardship, because that was God's will. Lightning cracked through the hurricane. Something shattered, and light broke through the falling shards. A glowing pillar appeared, dispelling the illusion magic that had hidden the virtuous goddess Themis' territory, a basic safety mechanism now undone. The spire rose into the sky. Before Kai could react, the magical storm surged again. Even the goddess was confused, she hadn't foreseen this. Her subordinates exchanged nervous glances as she questioned why the protagonist hadn't yet entered the citadel. Themis was worried, she should have sensed the boy's presence when he entered, but there was still no sign of him. Leaning forward, she muttered that she had left him just 10 meters from the tower, he should have found it by now. Perhaps, she mused, earthlings weren't good at acting independently. She looked over the dumbbells, sports nutrition, and training gear she had meticulously prepared for Kai. She had even included first-class equipment, game consoles, and, for some reason, a cat toy, so the young man could enjoy his free time. The winged spearman flew around the citadel. Themis believed that someone who accepted such a harsh contract deserved a comfortable training environment. An angel with a glowing halo reported that he had searched the citadel perimeter but couldn't find the person she mentioned. One of the goddess's subordinates stood silently, stunned. She was sure she had sent Kai there. The angel leaned forward hesitantly, glancing toward the spire. He suggested that Kai might have been thrown back by the abyssal storm. Ray placed his hand to his ear, accepted the order to find the boy, and closed his eyes. The goddess's voice shouted in his mind, demanding the hunter's return. Day clenched her fists. We can't just leave the protagonist to wander the abyss, he must be saved. The angel's expression turned solemn. He looked off into the distance and accepted her command. Turning toward the countless floating islands of the abyss, Ray promised to find Kai, no matter what. The sky resembled a cosmic nebula, an endless, starlit emptiness. Even the constellations had only managed to master fragments of this vast realm. Somewhere in that dark blue abyss, they had to find the man who had been carried away by the magical tornado. Ray flew toward the light, spear held before him. The goddess stood deep in thought, knowing his task was nearly impossible. The hurricane had erupted again, and Kai's body floated helplessly in the raging flow of mana, an energy that could destroy him. Kai closed his eyes and held his breath. It felt like sinking into the deep ocean, though he'd never been in one. He inhaled and exhaled deeply. Power entered his body, and system notifications appeared, high concentration mana detected through breathing. Divine space art is converting the energy. Kai's physical attributes are strengthening. Bones and muscles reinforced. He floated along the current, believing this to be another trial. The system then notified him that his Dantian and Kai potential had increased. Though his figure was tiny against the violent storm, he disappeared into its center. As expected, becoming an avatar of a constellation was not easy. A stream of mana pierced the sky and struck the ground. Kai, thrown aside, lay motionless but slowly rose. He hoped this was the end, that the first trial had been completed. Looking ahead, he assumed the next would begin there. In front of him, there was only barren stone. The storm had cast him to an unclaimed edge of the abyss, a place not ruled by any constellation. Suddenly, a massive serpent burst from the earth and dove back into it. Kai stared, stunned by the monster's sheer size. Still, he believed training meant victory. He compared the beast's stone head to Onyx from Pokemon, though he knew this one was a higher rank. Themis must be overestimating him, he was barely a C-rank hunter. Kai looked at the monster dumbly, then clenched his fist. There was no point in overthinking, Themis must have planned it all. He charged at the creature. I've got plenty of time. Let's fight. He struck its scales with a full-force punch. Nothing happened. The monster didn't react. He examined its armored body, of course, he couldn't even scratch it. The worm yawned. Kai frowned and kept punching. He resolved to train until he could reduce the beast to rubble. Elsewhere, someone unboxed a book titled Divine Space Art, obtained as a bonus from an auction. They asked if anyone wanted to learn it, but another hunter pointed out it was only a D-rank skill. Kai wrapped his fists with bandages while others discussed how martial arts were unpopular, difficult to master, and largely disregarded. Since no one wanted it, the owner decided to simply sell it. The protagonist looked up, startled by laughter. The old vendor's claim about the book was so absurd that no ordinary person would believe it. Yet Kai, intrigued, turned to the owner and asked if he could try it. The vendor eyed him curiously and asked if he was interested in martial arts. Kai nodded, replying that he had always liked reading. Another hunter standing nearby chuckled, commenting that Kai had strange tastes for his age but warned him not to rely on that skill alone. Kai took the book and stared at its cover. The hunter reminded him that cultivating Kai, the spiritual energy of martial artists, took a tremendous amount of time, and if he expected to grow stronger quickly, he should seek another method. Mages used mana to cast spells, martial artists used Kai to fight. Divine space art, especially, was unpopular due to how slowly it developed and how inconsistent its damage could be. Despite this, Kai opened the book and began reading. He knew he was different. He had plenty of chances to pursue easier arts, but something about this one felt right. With a smile, he started training. He struck with his left, then his right, remembering that divine space art had no unique method of cultivating Kai. Smoke rose from his fists. He unleashed the space fist, followed by moonwalk, then a powerful milky kick. His feet crackled with lightning. Each move, saturated with Kai, slowly fed his core. Repeating these strikes endlessly, Kai believed, would one day make him a true martial arts master. He closed his eyes, focusing. Training was simple in theory, but few had the perseverance to endure it. Clenching his fist, he swung again. Though he thought himself talentless, he was wrong. His strike crashed against a monster's armor. Unbeknownst to him, he had a unique talent, the will to endure fatigue and continue. The snake-like monster, Onyx, turned toward him, sensing danger. Kai's latest punch hit harder than any before, the culmination of 100 years of relentless repetition. The monster collapsed, and the system chimed, B+ rank skill acquired, inner destruction fist technique. Kai blinked, stunned as the system updated again. He had reached the advanced martial artist level in divine space art. As the onyx shattered into dust, Kai stood in disbelief. He was now a B-rank hunter. Yet, deep down, he felt empty. He remembered Tom, a Chinese hunter who had become the only A-rank martial artist, constantly hounded by paparazzi. Kai sighed, realizing that even if he advanced steadily, it might take him 1,000 years to catch up. Suddenly, Onyx groaned. Kai looked down to see the monster whining pitifully. With hands on his hips, he asked why it was staring at him like that. The truth was, the serpent had been Kai's training dummy for a century, and it could no longer ignore the pain. It looked at Kai longingly. His lips trembled. He had forced it into this role, and now it was begging for mercy. Kai relented. He agreed to stop, acknowledging his cruelty. Onyx approached him, and Kai, unsure where to go next, climbed onto the creature's head. Sitting calmly, he thanked the monster for the ride. A magical storm loomed on the horizon, a sound he recognized from when he first fell into the abyss 100 years ago. Kai stood up, half-turned toward the roaring storm, assuming it was a gift from the goddess Themis guiding him to the second trial. Onyx, frightened, refused to move forward. But Kai ordered the monster on all fours to continue. Reluctantly, it obeyed. The tornado lifted them into the air like a ragdoll. Onyx couldn't rise after the disorienting flight, but Kai was exhilarated. Looking at his hands, he felt revitalized. The storm had filled his body with mana, flushing away fatigue. He praised the goddess and the constellations, believing them responsible, though, in truth, the storm would have killed him instantly had he not blindly accepted it as a divine test. After the storm passed, Kai realized he hadn't eaten in over 100 years. Strangely, he wasn't hungry. But when he joked about eating, Onyx offered him a stone from its own body. Kai smiled and refused. No matter how hungry I am, I won't eat my pet. The serpent lifted him again, and the system notified him, combat insight gained, stone serpent fist. By mimicking the monster's movements, Kai had developed a powerful new technique, strong enough to crack the earth. He felt lighter, more flexible, like floating air. He tested the new form. His body twisted unnaturally, his punches mimicking the flowing strength of a snake. Though an advanced master, Kai still practiced divine space art. With new understanding, he looked forward to the next trial. Eventually, he arrived at the edge of a vast ocean with raging purple waves. He guessed his next trial would be underwater. Telling Onyx to stay, since it was made of stone and might drown, Kai dove in. The water hissed as he entered, and almost immediately, he realized something was wrong. Poisoned water invaded his body, rapidly depleting his Kai. The system warned that if he ran out, he would die. Sea monsters swarmed him. One bit his arm. But the system noted a change, his body was adapting. He exhaled deeply, and his poison resistance increased. Meanwhile, Onyx waited on the shore, watching the ripples anxiously. Suddenly, the water exploded. Kai flew from the sea and landed on dry land, gasping. He looked back at the depths, wondering if he should retrieve the glowing object he'd seen below. Staring into the abyssal ocean, he admitted, he didn't know how to swim through it. But he clung to hope. If this is another test from Themis, he said, then there must be a way. He was wrong again. Kai assumed a thoughtful pose, weighing his options. Then, with resolve, he turned to Onyx and realized he had no choice. He threw a punch, followed by a kick. His body tensed with determination as he concluded that, using the divine space art, he could accumulate enough Kai to swim across the poisonous ocean. It would take a long time, but it was the right thing to do. With a sigh, he etched another mark onto the massive training stone. Sadness crept into his expression, he had been here far too long. The boulder was covered in hundreds of notches, a testament to his growth and persistence. Though stronger, he couldn't help but complain. 200 years. Time flowed differently here, but even so, it wore on him. A snake slithered closer. Onyx. Kai glanced at his companion, uneasy despite their long time together. "Do you like eating stones?" he asked. They walked along the shore, and Kai admitted that although manna had eliminated his hunger, something still felt missing. Food, he realized. Real food. He missed it. The sunset cast a melancholic glow over the toxic waves, and Kai recalled saying something similar 2 centuries ago. Then, suddenly, a creature emerged from the poisonous sea. It stuck out a long tongue, hissing. Kai crouched and tilted his head. Technically, this thing was a fish, it lived in the ocean, after all. His eyes gleamed. If I cook it right, I could eat it. Onyx recoiled, unsettled by his master's sudden carnivorous excitement. Smoke rose from the monster's body. Kai stood over the carcass, contemplating. If I want to eat properly, he muttered, I need to cook it first. He headed toward a mountain of stones and punched with force. Shards flew into the air. Amid the debris, he found a jagged piece, a primitive stone knife. He grinned. Not bad for a first attempt. Together, Kai and Onyx stared at the monster. When the knife melted upon touching its flesh, Kai cursed. How am I supposed to cook this? Startled, Onyx let out a squeak and then slithered forward, offering something shiny. A surprised Kai picked it up. It was adamantium, a treasure among rock-type monsters. The snake turned a faint blue, as if embarrassed by the gift. The adamantium resisted the creature's corrosive fluid. Kai smiled slightly. With more training in the abyss, I could make real kitchen tools, he thought. He remembered something Bill once told him, everyone needs a hobby. It finally made sense. For the first time in centuries, he felt a flicker of joy. A hobby, cooking. He imagined himself as a chef, crafting meals that were both delicious and useful for training. Picking up a slice of meat, he said, this is all I can do for now. Then he took a bite. Onyx recoiled in horror. Green smoke escaped Kai's lips. He dropped to his knees, his face contorted. The system chimed frowny face warning, you have ingested a deadly poison. Using Kai from divine space art, neutralizing toxins. Poison successfully removed. Kai groaned and coughed. So that's what that was. He looked at the meat again. His tongue was numb, but it was edible. More importantly, the system added frowny face Kai slightly increased. Poison, he realized, was energy. It could be converted into Kai. Kai stood, fingers clenched. His eyes flashed. I'll eat every monster in this ocean. Onyx trembled as Kai declared the start of a new hunt. Several centuries passed. Kai emerged from the water, dragging two enormous sea creatures behind him. Their skeletons lay scattered in the sand. The Kai of his body and mind had changed. As he calmly chewed toxic meat, the system reported frowny face deadly poison spreading, neutralized. You have gained resistance to countless poisons. Skill acquired, A rank, perfect immunity to poison. He raised his palm. Toxins no longer affected him. In fact, he could now release poison from his Dan ion. He closed his eyes. Divine space art has leveled up. Expert level achieved. He opened his eyes. Stars twinkled above. The goddess still hadn't summoned him. He hoped everything was fine back on Earth. The training stone was now completely covered in notches. Expert level, he said quietly. And full resistance to poison. On Earth, I'd already be an A-rank hunter. He lay next to the stone for a moment, reflecting. There, he'd be considered a strategic weapon, owned by the state. But even that hadn't been enough to save his world. Kai stood and turned to Onyx. It's time to move on. He stroked the snake's head. We'll part ways here. Where I'm going, is far more dangerous. Onyx's eyes widened. You're a stone type, Kai said softly. You might not survive underwater. He waved farewell. Go home. Then he dove into the depths. With full immunity to poison, the ocean no longer threatened him. Sea monsters scattered at his presence, fleeing in terror. Eventually, he found it, a glowing point of magical energy. The same one he'd glimpsed on his first day here. A portal, he thought. To the next training ground. Immersed in light, Kai knelt as the system responded frowny face warning, hostility detected. All Kai gates activated. Auto defense mode engaged. His body pulsed with energy. This was the power of someone who had reached the expert level, his body prepared for battle on its own. 3 monsters turned toward him. Then 2 more. Even to non-martial artists, the danger here would be obvious. A red moon hung in the sky. The air brimmed with bloodlust. This was a high-level dungeon. A pink star flared in the sky. Constellations, godlike beings, ruled this place. Their laws shaped the world around them. One of the monsters, towering and demonic, laughed. What race are you? He asked. Kai frowned. Human. The monster leaned forward, grinning. First time here. His stomach opened like a maw. Let me give you a proper welcome. From within, he drew a massive sword. All newcomers must be cut down. That's the law of the Lord of Blood and Battles, Karl. Kai readied himself. Karl, the Lord of Blood and Battles. The demon swung. Kai's fist lit up with purple energy. Skill activated, Kai fist. He struck the sword. It shattered. Kai leapt into the air and slammed his fist into Karl's face, knocking the demon to the ground. The other monsters stared, stunned. Kai pointed at them. I've come to take the test. They laughed. A test? You want our attention, one said, licking his lips. You've got guts. But you're strong, for a weak-looking guy," another added. "Maybe you're worth the Lord's attention." They attacked as one, a tide of snarling monsters drunk on bloodlust. Their eagerness was almost childish, as if they hadn't had this much fun in ages. Kai turned halfway, calmly watching the oncoming enemies as if they weren't aiming to tear him apart. In one swift motion, his fist struck out in both directions. A heavy crack echoed through the battlefield as a blue-skinned demon took a direct hit to the jaw and was sent flying. The first wave soared into the air like puppets cut from their strings. The next wave kept coming, relentless, trying to surround him, cut off his movement, suppress those strange, unexplainable techniques he kept using. Kai exhaled and raised his leg. With a sweeping kick glowing with milky white energy, he shattered the enemy formation. Bodies scattered like leaves in a storm. TCH. Kai clicked his tongue, scanning the endless sea of monsters around him. This place is too open. I don't like being surrounded. The lead demon narrowed his eyes, quickly realizing this human was stronger than he looked. His monstrous hounds bared their fangs, saliva dripping from their jaws. "He's still a man," the demon muttered. "And men are food for my pets." Kai frowned. "Those are dogs?" The hounds lunged before he could get an answer. Displeased by the sheer number of enemies, Kai assumed a low fighting stance and drove his fist into one of the dogs. As he did, a message rang in his mind, a reminder of the rules in this cursed domain. Territory law: under the influence of the constellation of conflict, all must be ready to defend themselves. Kai grimaced as another beast bit deep into his shoulder. Secondary rule: avatars must engage in eternal combat. No exceptions. Figures, he muttered. With a casual strike, he sent the demon flying and retreated, searching for better ground. His eyes caught a small building in the distance. Without hesitation, Kai dashed forward, kicked open the door, and stepped inside. "Sorry for the intrusion. I'm borrowing this for a bit." A bearded demon inside smiled, waving a ladle. "Good timing, kid. Soup's just about done." Kai blinked. The place had tables, chairs, it looked like a proper restaurant. "There are restaurants here?" he asked. "Of course," the owner grinned. "Can't fight well on an empty stomach." Scratching the back of his head, Kai sighed. "Fair point. I haven't had anything decent in forever. Mind if I—" Before he could finish, the demon grinned wider and poured an entire vat of bubbling stew over his head. A green cloud of poisonous steam engulfed him. "How's that? Tasty?" the demon asked eagerly. Kai inhaled the smoke with his hands, drawing the toxic vapor into his body. The cloud didn't faze him. His immunity to poison was perfect. In fact, he'd trained to absorb toxins into his dantian and convert them into usable energy. He smiled. "Not bad. Strong flavor." The demon stared, stunned. "What, are you?" Monsters burst into the restaurant then, weapons drawn and fangs bared. "There he is. Kill him." Kai stood calmly, confidence radiating from his posture. The owner's face darkened as shadows crept behind him, but before he could react, Kai's knee smashed into it. Boom. "That's your tip," Kai said flatly. A table clattered across the floor as he flipped it in front of him, forming a crude barricade. "Come on then," he challenged. "I've got all day." The monsters hesitated. This human was insane. With a chair raised over his head, Kai shouted, "I can fight forever." He swung down, blocking a demon's blade with the chair's legs, then snatched the enemy's sword with one hand. Skill acquired, B+ ranked martial art, improvised weapon, chair. Kai grinned. Knew it. He punched the monster with a chair in hand, energy surging through his veins. In the end, he muttered, "The best insights always come in life or death moments." Far away, Themis, the virtuous goddess of scales, watched with growing concern. There was still no word from Kain Ray. Somewhere in the abyss, an angel flew without purpose, unsure how to find a single soul in the vast darkness. Back at the restaurant, the battlefield was littered with unconscious demons. Kai exhaled and lowered his chair. How many more times do I have to do this? He muttered. His eyes wandered to the cauldron from earlier. Drawn by instinct, he approached it. His martial awareness had sharpened from battle, he could sense something unusual inside. Just as he leaned over, a hand grabbed his ankle. You have no idea what that is," the demon gasped. Kai turned slowly and stared. "Still alive, huh? The Lord of Blood and Battle doesn't allow meaningless deaths," the demon cried. "We're revived to continue fighting, over and over again." Then he broke down, tears leaking from his eyes. "It took me years to get that adamantite cauldron," Kai stomped on his nose. "Quiet. You got it by beating others, didn't you?" He crouched and whispered, "Doesn't matter. The winner takes everything." Outside, monsters lay groaning. Inside, Kai stood with arms crossed. "This place is mine now." He picked up a chunk of the wall and started hammering. Once, he'd read a story about a retired martial artist who owned a small tavern. Inspired, Kai kept working. By sunset, he stood outside the building, now wearing a pink apron. "This place is officially renamed Kiri Kiri." The demon groaned on the ground. "You can't just rename it," Kai smiled. "Then take it back. If you can." He walked back into the kitchen, inspecting the ingredients. It was surprisingly clean. Memories of Bill's advice came back to him: how to have hobbies, how to eat raw monster meat. There were ingredients here. A kitchen. And a cauldron. That was enough. He grabbed a strange piece of meat and took a bite. Status: poisoned. Again. He frowned and grabbed a strange fruit. Same result. Spiky mushrooms, roots, leaves, all poisoned. Kai sat down, holding his head in his hands. Why is everything toxic, in a restaurant? Then it hit him. Oh, this is what demons eat. His eyes lit up. Wait, it's fine. I'm immune. He walked to the cauldron with determination. I'll cook everything. I'll use the poison as an ingredient. And just like that, a new life began. By day, Kai fought monsters outside the diner for experience. By night, he experimented with poisonous recipes. His life in the diner continued, for hundreds of years. Until one day, the door slammed open. The demon chef had returned. "I want my restaurant back," he shouted, armed with a knife and cleaver. Kai placed his hands on his hips and smiled. "Honestly? I admire your persistence." Then he threw them all out in under a minute. "This isn't some trashy restaurant anymore," he declared, tossing the chef through the door. "It's a pub now." The demon, bruised and dazed, looked up at him in disbelief. Why didn't my blade even touch you?" "Simple," Kai grinned. "I'm the owner now." He slammed the door shut. "Leave before I decide to put my foot down."